Hello everybody, I'm Don Counts. Welcome to Fayetteville Public Utilities Channel 6. Today we have some friends in the house. We have Miss Pat Davis right here. I've known her for seemed like forever because she's on Mulberry Avenue for all my life, I feel like. And then we have Wayne Owens over here. Wayne and I met at the Whitaker Higgins Cemetery. How many years ago was that, Wayne?
I guess it was about 2010.
Wow, so about 10 years ago. That was an interesting story, and I guess that's what we're going to talk about. We're going to talk about some historic stuff. We're going to be talking about someone named Mial Ramsey, and we're going to talk about that story, and they've got this all down pat. So first of all, Wayne, let's talk about you real quick. What got you involved in the cemeteries thing and led you to this, I guess?
Well, Don, first of all, I want to thank you and FPU for allowing Pat and I the time to come down and tell the Mial Ramsey story. Out of all the stories that I've come across, I believe this is the most interesting one in Lincoln County.
Wow.
And I think everybody will enjoy it. But I'm a researcher, and I've been researching full time since 2008. And my research takes me into all different directions. I collect old photographs from Lincoln County, and I work at the archives. And but my favorite thing is going out and finding old cemeteries on property and looking at them. My friend Jim Stillman and I, we go out and we locate these old cemeteries and we take photographs. He puts these photographs on a website called Find a Grave, and it's a free site, and people all over the world can look and see their family tombstone if there's one.
Wow.
Now, I've coined a new word for what I do. I've decided that I'm a cemetologist.
Wow, that's a good word.
A cemetologist, one who studies old cemeteries.
Does it pay well?
Not a lot, but it is interesting.
Oh, it pays in other ways, for sure.
What I do, usually when I go out to old cemeteries, and I'll maybe find the oldest grave there, and I'll bring that picture back in, and I'll get with Pat and ask Pat, say, Pat, see if you can find out something about this individual. I'd like to know a little something about the people buried there. So she's really good. She gets on the internet and she researches, and she'll come back and she'll usually find something about the person.
Pat, how difficult is it at the archives to do this research? How do you know where to look?
Well, we have lots of different sources, but usually we're on Ancestry or Find a Grave or the Fold 3, which is the military website, and it's just lots of different ways that you can look and research out there, and everybody out there kind of pitches in when we find something interesting, and everybody will, if they find something about somebody, they'll say, hey, here's something about them, you know. So it's kind of a group thing with the ones of us that are fairly regular out there.
Tell me some of the regulars that's out there.
Okay, well, Sherry Tomerlin's in charge, and Bobby Springfield, and Peggy Coleman, and Wayne, and myself. We're the ones that are there most of the time.
It's a very.
Then there's a lot of people that just come and go, and you'd be amazed, from all different states and, you know, everywhere. They're looking for something that ties to Lincoln County.
We're very lucky to have an archives like we have.
Yes.
I just want to mention, we have a lot of people that come in from all over the country.
Wow.
And I guess we had a lady that, I guess 4 years ago, she came in from Alaska. And her people were from Lincoln County, and she was retired military up in Alaska. So we have a lot of people come in.
All right, Wayne, this Mial Ramsey story started from finding a grave in the cemetery.
It did, and I really believe that one of the most interesting things about this story is how it came about. And I'll try to explain that.
Okay.
I work with Pat, and she has an office at her shop on Mulberry Avenue. And I stopped by one day, and it just happened to be her classmate was there talking to her, Don Wiley, okay? And Don, he looked at me and he said, I understand you like to go into old cemeteries. And I said, I do. And he says, I've got one on my farm nobody knows about. Well, that piqued my interest because I have found probably 4 or 5 unknown cemeteries through the years. And that's exciting because these people lived and died buried on their farms and nobody knows about them.
Right.
So anyhow, I made arrangements with Jim Stillman and we said, well, let's go down and meet Don down around Malina, and he lives on the old Malina Road. So we picked a pretty day and we drove down. Well, Don says, jump in my old truck here and I'll take you down there. So we did. So we jumped in the truck and he drove south from his home, and not far down the road he turned off into a field. Well, he headed out towards some woods. So when we got to the edge of the woods, I got out and I walked in. Well, the first thing I saw, and I'll show you a picture of it. The first thing I saw was this cut rock wall around a small cemetery.
Wow.
That's some large rocks, Don.
Wow.
It took some effort to cut those and to haul them and put them in place.
Especially back in those days.
In those days, now.
What year are you talking there about?
Well, we'll talk about that. When I looked at it, I recognized that the person must be an important person for somebody to put these rocks around the cemetery.
Sure.
I looked around the area looking for more graves, because normally there's going to be more than one person buried in a cemetery. But we didn't find any other graves.
Wow.
And the size of this particular little enclosure is large enough for 2 people. Well, I noticed a tombstone inside the rock wall here. But when I got in there and I started looking, you could not see any writing whatsoever on it. So I thought the weather had probably just worn it all off. So we carried some sidewalk chalk. And what I did, I rubbed it with the chalk and words started appearing.
Wow.
And that excited me. So I saw some dates. And what I found out was that the top half of the tombstone, the name Mial Ramsey appeared. Well, the bottom part of the stone had his wife's name. Well, what does that tell me? That tells me that stone was put up by the family after both had died.
Wow.
So I thought that was interesting, but I'll show you another view.
There it is.
There's another view of the tombstone, and you can see the size of those rocks, huge.
Is this kind of how you found it, or have you done
That's
it?
exactly the way we found it. So over time, maybe animals, but to move those rocks, it was like 2 levels of rocks. And I have no idea how those stones was moved.
Wow.
But what I'm going to do now, I'm going to give you a close-up. Here's the tombstone that I found. And you can see it's M-I-A-L, Ramsey.
Wow.
Now we've got his dates over there. And this guy was born in 1785.
Wow.
Which means he was not born here, because people didn't come into here till early 1800s.
Okay.
So that told me he's from somewhere else. Well, if you notice, his wife, Sally, she dies in 1835, but he doesn't die till 1865. So I guess he never remarried, and the family put up the tombstone after they was both dead. But it's held up pretty well over the years, but you couldn't see any writing on it till we chalked it.
So now how you do the chalk? You just rub some chalk on?
Actually, we get the large type chalk from Walmart, plug them. But so turn it sideways and smoothly. But when you put it on there, what I do after I'm finished, I take my hand and smooth it out. Okay. And it helps. Now, this particular one, I wished it'd come out a little bit better, but that's what I've got right now.
That's good.
And what I want to do now is turn it over. Pat's going to give you the detail that she found out. Let me comment a little bit.
Okay.
I came into the archives and I showed Pat this photograph, and I said, Pat, see if you can find out something about these people, because they're not in the cemetery books.
That had to be exciting for you.
Yes, it was.
It was exciting for me. So anyhow, I'm not making this up. A few days went by and Pat would come in and she'd say, Wayne, here's what I found out. And I'd look at her like, come on. Well, a few more days, she'd come back with something that was just as strange. And I said, is she making this up? Well, eventually, what happened after 6 weeks or so, I said, Pat, this story has to be told. This story is so important for Lincoln County. It needs to be told. So she put together a package, and we put together photographs to kind of show with the article. And we presented this to, what was the organization, Pat?
The Historical Society.
Okay, and we had a good turnout. And that was what, 2 or 3 years ago maybe?
Almost 2 years ago.
But this gives us an opportunity to reach more people. And I believe you'll be interested in who these people were and what they did.
Absolutely. Well, I think I'm already fascinated. So I'm sure finding the pieces to the puzzle was fun.
Yes, it really was, and it was very involved in looking up everything. And I'll start at the beginning. Mial Ramsey was born March 4th, 1785 in North Carolina, and he died October the 19th, 1865 in Lincoln County. And his wife, Sarah, who was called Sally Goldston Ramsey, was born October the 8th, 1787 in North Carolina, and she died December the 8th, 1835 in Lincoln County.
Do you know why she died?
No, I really don't. They did have 10 children, so I don't know.
That probably did.
Yeah.
There's the answer.
Right, yeah.
Excuse me, Pat and Don.
Okay.
One of the reasons, we have old newspapers that start from 1850.
Wow, okay.
And they go through they're online up to 1880, but we've got them on microfilm down at the archives. But anybody that died prior to 1850, you can't find an obituary. There's nowhere to look.
Oh.
So, but we do use obituaries out of newspapers. A lot of times it'll tell you what they died of, but in this case, we don't.
Wasn't available.
I understand. Well, that's just interesting. And how old was she when she died? What was the math on that? She was pretty young, wasn't she?
About 45.
40, okay.
Somewhere
45,
in there.
yeah.
Okay.
All right.
Now the first part that I want to start with is a little bit of background on Mial and Sally. They married in North Carolina in January of 1806. And at age 27, Mial enlisted in the 5th Regiment of North Carolina Militia and served in the War of 1812, and that's why we're here today. Mm-hmm. And he was the son of Matthew Ramsey, who was a captain in the Revolutionary War. And Mial's mother's name was Nancy Ann Scurlock Ramsey, and she was the daughter of a Revolutionary War soldier, Major Mial Scurlock. And Mial Scurlock and his wife, Sarah Howard Scurlock, and our Mial Ramsey was named after his grandfather, Mial Scurlock. The Mial and Sarah Howard Scurlock had several children besides Nancy, and one of their sons, whose name was Joseph, and his wife named their son Mial Scurlock. So now we have 2 Mials. Therefore, our Mial and Mial Scurlock were first cousins. And there's a little bit of an interesting side story about Mial Scurlock. He and one of his brothers, William, left North Carolina and made their way to Texas in 1834, where they both joined the Texas Army in 1835. And they were at the Alamo, where Mial was killed during the battle. The following is a list, partial list of the casualties that were at the Alamo. The first scan shows the famous person that we all know is Colonel Davy Crockett, and from Tennessee, and he was born in 1786. And the next scan shows Private Mial Scurlock, who was born in 1809 in North Carolina, and had him as a fatality. And in 1852, Mial Scurlock's family received a grant of 640 acres of what they call donation land for his service in that war.
Wow.
At the Alamo.
And that land was where?
In Texas.
In Texas, okay. Thank you.
And according to family history, just prior to the beginning of the battle, Mial's brother, William, was sent in search of horses and supplies, so he wasn't there when the battle took place that took the life of his brother.
Oh.
So at the Battle of Goliad, where Colonel James Fanning's troops surrendered but were then massacred by Mexican forces, William's life was spared again because he had some medical knowledge. And they used him as a medical assistant to help the Mexican troops, and then finally he managed somehow to escape. And William Scurlock died in 1835 in Texas and is buried in the Abney Scurlock Cemetery in Sabine County, Texas. And located in this cemetery is a historical marker honoring William and his brother Mial. The next photo is the actor Joe Stevens, who portrayed Mial Scurlock in the 2004 movie of the Alamo.
Oh, that's cool.
So we found all of that, and it was just interesting to have that background to Mial Ramsey.
Absolutely.
And now, though, I'm going to continue with Mial and Sally Goldston Ramsey. And they had 10 children that were born between 1807 and 1824. All were born in North Carolina before they came to Tennessee. Their fourth child, William, was born in 1811, and he died in 1816 while the family was still in North Carolina. And the other 9 children came to Tennessee with their parents, and that's what most of this story is about, is their children that came with them to Tennessee.
Can you tell me why they came to Tennessee?
Not really, I
Not
don't
really.
know. No, don't know.
I guess we could ask everybody that.
Yeah, right.
Come here.
Just wanted to come here because it was a new area that was being settled. Yeah.
Very good.
And
Let me just break in here for a second.
Okay.
The Battle of Kings Mountain. The government, they gave land to the soldiers and the families that fought at the Battle of Kings Mountain. At that time, they were surveying the area known as Lincoln County. So if you look at the DAR chapter, it is the Kings Mountain chapter here in Lincoln County.
Right.
So these people that came in here, it was connected to the land that they were given, maybe given to their family members or whatever.
Gotcha.
But it's something about the land.
Very good.
okay, Mial Ramsey was listed on the 1830 census in Lincoln County, but at that time it didn't list the name of the wife, and it didn't list children's names. It just listed the head of household.
Very interesting.
And then it listed like how many was in the household
Gotcha.
by ages, not by name.
I'm sure if they had that to do over again, they would put the names.
That's
on the-
right. That's right.
I'm
It would
thinking,
surely,
what were they thinking?
right. It would surely help us
That's
in
right,
our
today.
research today.
Today.
Yes. But tax records at the archives from 1830 show Mial in Lincoln County, but they show he had owned no land at this time. And now I'm going to start with the children
Okay.
and tell a little bit that I've been able to discover about each one of them. Some of them have a little more than others. The first child was John James Ramsey, and he was born January 1807, and he's listed on an 1840 census in Lincoln County in District 8. It shows one male between 30 and 40, which would be right for his age, and one female between 20 and 30, which would probably be his wife. But I've not been able to find any other definite information about John James Ramsey. So I don't like to assume things. I like to make sure that I have the facts, before I put anything out there, so other researchers that might be looking say, well, this person had this written down and it's not true. Yeah. So unless I can find something to back it up, I try not to go ahead with.
That's very good. That keeps us all out of trouble.
Yeah. The second child was a girl, Nancy Ann Ramsey, and she was born in 1809, and she married a man named Doyle Griffiths, who lived in Lincoln County, and they married about 1834, 1835, and they had at least 8 children. And Doyle was born in 1784, so he was 25 years older than Nancy. And he passed away in 1852 at the age of 78. And we researched some deed records at the archives, and we believe where the Ramsey Cemetery is located was owned by the Griffiths family before being sold to the Wiley family in 1878.
Because the Wiley family, if I'm not mistaken, that's a 100-year farm, is that correct?
Yes, I believe that's right.
That's pretty cool.
In the 1860 census, Mial Ramsey was living with Nancy and her children. So on this record, Mial's first name was spelled M-E-A-L. So at the archives, we nicknamed him Cornmeal. And anybody that would find something say, we've got something about cornmeal. And Nancy Ramsey Griffiths died in 1873, and she is buried in the Rawls Cemetery in Lincoln County beside her husband, Doyle Griffiths.
Where's the Rawls Cemetery?
It's down in the Molina area, okay. So it's close.
Okay.
And one of their sons, Thomas Doyle Griffiths, was a captain during the Civil War. So we have that little bit of information about him. The third child, Elizabeth Ramsey, was born July 1st, 1810, and she married a guy named Dr. James Smith Abernathy on March 19, 1829 in Lincoln County. And they lived in Limestone County, Alabama, and had 8 children. And Elizabeth Ramsey Abernathy died in 1867, and she's buried in a family cemetery on the Abernathy farm in Limestone County, Alabama. The fourth child was the one named William, who was born and died at age 5 in North Carolina. The fifth child, Susannah Ramsey, was born in 1813, and she married a man named Lerner Black Moores around 1839 in Lincoln County. And in the 1850 census, which is after his wife Sally died in 1835, Mial was living with that family in Ouachita County, Arkansas. And by some researchers, it was first thought that Mial died in Arkansas sometime after the 1850 census because they didn't find him in Arkansas anymore. But as we know, he returned to Lincoln County and was living with his daughter Nancy in the 1860 census. This daughter, Susannah, died in 1880, and she's buried in Nevada County, Arkansas. And the following scan, which is the one on the screen now, is Susan Ann Moores Haddocks, and she is a daughter of Lerner and Susannah Ramsey, Moores, and granddaughter of Mial and Sally Ramsey, and she's pictured here with her grandchildren. So that was kind of a interesting tie-in to one of the family to find a photograph of some member of the family, right, which we've not found many photos
Where
of family.
Where did you find that picture?
On ancestry.
Ancestry.
Mhm.
Wow.
Yeah.
So that's really cool. That's an old
So,
picture.
so that means that there's family member out there that's putting these pictures,
Yeah.
so we know they exist.
Yeah.
Would love to meet some of them.
Yeah. And now this next child is Mial Ramsey Jr., and he's one of the most interesting and one of the ones that we have found more information on. He was born in 1815, and he first married a girl named Belinda Commons in Lincoln County, and they had several children. After Belinda's death in 1857, he married a lady named Sarah Good on April 1858 in Limestone County, Alabama, and that's where they made their home. On September 12, 1862, Mial enlisted in Company E, the 10th Regiment, Middle Tennessee Infantry in Nashville. And this is a Union regiment.
Oh.
Interesting,
Now,
isn't it?
Yeah, no, that I don't know. Why would you think that would be? Mial Ramsey Jr. was in the Union?
We had a lot of Lincoln County people that were in the Union.
And how was that? How did that happen? What would you do that for?
Who knows, okay?
They're
I thought y'all were going to have a good answer
difference
to
of
that.
opinion in
Okay.
political
I got
views,
you.
I
We have
guess.
that here, so
Right.
we-
Pat
Yes.
continues, you're going to be surprised at what happened now.
I believe his enlistment form is on the screen now, and it states that he was 48 years old at this time, which is pretty old to be joining up.
Yeah, I don't think they'd take me.
And he was 6 feet 1 inch tall, and he had blue eyes and light hair. And it states that he was a wagon builder, and he was born in Chatham County, North Carolina.
Wow, that's great.
Okay, on September 24th, 1864, while he was on furlough at Athens, Alabama, he was captured by the Confederate soldiers and taken to the Cahaba prison camp near Selma, Alabama. When the war ended, men from Camp Cahaba and some from Andersonville, which is in western Georgia, they were taken to a small parole camp outside of Vicksburg, Mississippi, to await release. At Vicksburg, a large number of parolees were loaded on this Mississippi side wheel steamer named the Sultana.
Wayne, first of all, OSHA wouldn't approve of that many people on the boat today.
Wait till you hear the story.
Okay, this first photograph was taken on April the 26th, 1865. The Sultana had a capacity of 376 passengers, but she was loaded with around 2,400 passengers. When 3 or 4 of her boilers exploded just past Memphis on April the 27th, 1865, which was the next day after the first photograph was made. The Sultana burned and sank, killing 1,800 passengers.
Oh my goodness,
At
I
the
didn't know we
end-
were getting into that.
At the end of the war,
Oh,
you're going home, and this is what happened.
oh my goodness, what a sad, oh, that just
And
breaks
that's
my
a
heart.
story on its own to
Sure.
if you go in and read about the Sultana. There's a lot of information out there about it.
I would like to read that.
Yeah.
That's very interesting. Wow, that's just,
A large number of the passengers were Union soldiers from Tennessee and Kentucky, and the government, in an attempt to get the released prisoners back home to the North, had agreed to pay the ship captain, or any ship captain, $5 for each enlisted man and $10 for officers that they would load on their ship for transport. So the greed is probably what accounted for the overloading of the vessel.
that guy was going to get rich.
Yes, with all of
Sad.
that many
Yes, sad.
passengers.
Wow.
According to official military War Department records found on Fold 3, Mial Ramsey Jr. perished on board the steamer Sultana.
Wow.
And the newspapers at the time did not report much about the tragedy because, but the Sultana was listed as one of the as the worst maritime disaster in U.S. history. The story of the sinking of the Sultana was overshadowed by news about the end of the war and the assassination of President Lincoln on April the 15th, 1865.
Wow.
So the newspapers they were too busy reporting other
Sure.
things to put this in.
And we see that kind of thing happen today. Where
Right.
big stories get buried because
Right.
something else is happening.
Mhm.
But very interesting.
In November 1869, two men, A.C. Nichols and Levi Goldsmith, who were survivors of the Sultana disaster, gave an account of the incident to help Mial's widow prove his death for her pension application.
Wow.
And in 1982, a local archaeological expedition led by a Memphis attorney uncovered what was believed to be the wreckage of the Sultana. They found blackened wooden deck planks and timbers that were 32 feet under a soybean field on the Arkansas side of the Mississippi River, about 4 miles from Memphis. The river's changed course several times since the disaster, leaving the wreck under dry land and far from the main channel of the river, which now flows about 2 miles east of its 1865 position.
Wow. That's very interesting. So this was, you may have mentioned that early on, it was on the Mississippi River, but not far from Memphis.
It was just above Memphis. They had docked in Memphis the day before, and they were departing Memphis when the explosion happened.
Ooh.
And the city of Marion, Arkansas, which is nearest the location of where these remains were found, has appropriated $400,000 toward the building of a museum to house and display items related to the Sultana disaster.
Wow. And that's going on now?
Yes.
And that's very interesting. I would like to know more about that. for
Yeah.
sure. Very good.
And now that's the end of Mial Ramsey Jr.
Okay.
So the seventh child is Matthew Ramsey, and he was born in 1818, and he married a lady named Letty Lentz in 1842, and she was from Limestone County, Alabama as well. So she probably knew Mial Ramsey Jr.'s wife, or they may have even been related.
All right.
And he died in 1897. I don't know a lot about him other than his marker at Shoemaker Cemetery in Limestone, Alabama, says that he was a minister. But I've not been able to find a lot of other information about him.
You don't know what kind of minister?
No. The eighth child was Sarah Auld Ramsey, who was born in 1820, and she married a man named Josiah Norwood in 1839, also in Lincoln County. And there's Lincoln County Bible records that are at the archives. And in volume 4 of that work, pages from the Norwood family Bible show a lot of births and deaths and marriages of many of the Ramsey family.
Okay, let's go back. Bible
Lincoln County Bible records.
records, what is that? I mean, does somebody just donated the Bible for record information?
Well, there were some people that maybe documented them, copied them, and put it all together as a work, and there's several volumes of it
I think
at
my
the
mother
archives.
has done that, so that's interesting
Yeah.
that the people, you can utilize that as a record. I just
Right.
figured that would be a family record, but you still would be good information.
Right,
Well,
yes.
Don, thing about a Bible record, Miss Sherry at the archive, she's also over the DAR, and you've got to trace your family back to become a member of the DAR.
Right.
But see, they accept Bible records, all the births and the deaths.
Okay.
That's an official record, and
Okay.
they will accept that.
I don't think most people would know that. That's very interesting, very good. Okay.
And Sarah and Josiah Norwood had 9 children. And this family went to Arkansas like her sister, Susannah Moores, and her family. And Sarah died in 1885, and she's buried in Lafayette County, Arkansas. Now, the 9th child was named Benjamin Franklin Ramsey, and he was born in 1822. And Benjamin joined the Lincoln County Guards on May 31st, 1846, as a private to serve in the Mexican War under General Scott.
Okay, let's talk about the Lincoln County Guards.
Mm-hmm.
Is that what they were called, or is that like the National Guard, or what?
No, that was just what they called the Lincoln County Guards.
Wow, very good.
And in 1860, he's listed in the 8th District, and he's single, and he's 38 years old, and he says he's a carpenter. In 1862, he enlisted in Company G of Turney's 1st Regiment, Tennessee Infantry, Confederate States of America. So there, his views were different from his brother, who enlisted in the Union Army.
Wow.
And he was elected captain of this regiment. He served under General Lee in Virginia. And the Lincoln County Heritage Book lists his name under both wars. And so you can look, if you have one of those volumes of the Lincoln County Heritage Book, you can look in there and find his name.
Very good. I got one of those.
And after the war, he came back to Lincoln County and married a woman named Martha Ann, but I've not been able to find what her last name was. And they had 3 children. And he was a member of the Order of the Odd Fellows. And that was a organization that was here in Lincoln County at the time. And he died, Captain B.F. Ramsey died on July the 5th, 1872, at the age of 49 years, 11 months, and 16 days. And his, a small obituary was in the Observer newspaper telling about his death. And he's buried at Rose Hill Cemetery, which is his marker.
That's a great marker. That's really cool. But will you back that up one to one there for me? I've got to. I don't think you really. It's interesting that this obituary said he's about 50.
Yeah.
He was intelligent, honest, industrious, and frugal man. Now that's
yeah.
You didn't read that, did you? I thought that's pretty interesting right there that they would put that in there, and it shows where he fought and all that. That
yeah,
is
no,
really,
I didn't read or say exactly what was on the obituary,
that's
yeah,
amazing.
it was interesting.
And it showed where he served in the Mexican
Right.
War and all that.
A lot of them just tell maybe that somebody died and maybe where they lived. Sometimes it'll tell who their parents were, but a lot of times there's not a whole lot of information in the Observer. But
and now Wayne, let's go back. You said you have y'all have the you'll go back that far at the archives in the Fayetteville Observer?
Actually, online, free, is a site that's called Chronicling America.
Okay.
And you can type in Chronicling America, and they have put on all the old newspapers, including the Fayetteville Observer from 1850 to 1880. And they quit.
And this is free?
This is free.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll tell you, it's cleaned up, whereas a microfilm, it'll destroy your eyes.
That's right.
But they've cleaned it up online.
Oh, man.
And so if somebody's looking for something between 1850 and 1880, we prefer using the computer.
Gotcha. Very good. All right. I'm not going to try to keep interrupting.
And that's okay.
That's really interesting.
Yeah, it is. And he does have a really nice marker.
Just right up here on the cross.
Right up here on
There's
the
a lot
right
of
up on the
history.
hill.
Right
There's
on
a lot of history at Rose Hill. Yes,
That's
there
right.
is. Sure is. Okay, now the last child, the 10th child, his name was Thomas Raglan Ramsey, and he was born 1824, and he married a woman named Rachel Jane Smith in Lincoln County on January 1st, 1846. Rachel was the daughter of Francis and Fannie Gray Smith, and Thomas and Rachel Jane had 10 children. And here's where I got really interested. One of their children, Samuel Brooke Ramsey, had a son named Curtis Ramsey, who married my great-grandmother's sister.
Oh, so this whole thing started out, you didn't know this, and it evolved into coming close back to your family.
I did have information that her name was Allie Forrester, by the way, And I did know that she was married to a man named Curtis Ramsey, and I knew that his father was Samuel Brooke Ramsey, but that's as far back as I had. So when we started working on Mial Ramsey, well, it just all connected, and that's what got me so interested in the research of the whole family, was the connection that I found to my family.
That is really interesting. And it also says here that he was elected as alderman here in Fayetteville. That's interesting, in 1862.
1862, yes. Wow. He was Thomas Raglan Ramsey was elected as an alderman for the city of Fayetteville. And that was a document that came out of the Fayetteville Observer. And he continued to stay involved in community politics, as seen in the next photograph, which is the county court members in 1904.
Wow.
And in
what a picture.
And in the picture, he would have been 80 years old.
Do you know which one of them would
yes,
be him?
I do.
Oh, you do? I can't believe. I thought I was going to stump you, but I don't think I'm going to be able to.
Well, there were some names on the back of the photograph, which helped considerably.
Okay.
He's the man with the long white beard on the fifth row, on the last row, fifth from left. And that is his son, Samuel Brooke Ramsey, standing beside him on the end. So both of them were members of the county court in 1904.
Wow.
And this is the only known photo of any of the children of Mial and Sally Ramsey. But see, you're getting on up into years when photographs, were being able to be made, which the earlier ones, there's no photos unless somebody out there has some photos that, we've not been able to locate.
I love the bow ties.
Oh, I know.
It's now trying to come back in the 1900, early 1900s. Yeah. That's really cool.
Notice everybody's got a mustache or
a beard.
That's right.
They're very distinguished looking.
Very good. I can just imagine what it would look like in the old courthouse there, and them sitting around probably smoking.
Yeah. Okay, at the time of his death, Thomas Ramsey was the oldest member of the Lincoln County Calhoun Lodge of the Order of the Oddfellows.
Wow.
And his brother, Benjamin Franklin Ramsey, was also, as you remember, we talked about that a while ago when we were talking on him. And Thomas had joined the order in 1847, so he died in early 1900s, 1912, so he was a member for a long time. And if you'll notice in this next photograph, which is a photo of Thomas Raglan Ramsey's marker, also at Rose Hill, you notice at the top of the marker are 3 rings.
Okay.
And that was also on Benjamin Franklin Ramsey's marker too.
Okay.
And that's the symbol for the Order of the Oddfellows.
Oh, really?
So if you find a tombstone anywhere that has those 3 linked rings, that might mean that they were a member.
What is that Order of Oddfellows?
Well, it was just an organization, kind of like
a lodge.
Yeah, like the Masons.
But the 3 rings, I think Pat can tell you what they stand for.
They stand.
Go ahead.
They stand for friendship, love, and truth.
That is really nice. Now, tell me, Wayne, that cemetery is that's like, if I went up there to find that to be a needle in a haystack, where would I sort of aim to go look if I wanted to see?
These Ramsey graves, and yes, I spent a lot of time walking around looking.
It'd take me a day to find it.
But actually, if you went in the entrance that's on Washington Street.
Gotcha.
The first entrance on the east end of it. And if you came in that entrance and walked close to the wall going west,
okay,
it would be right in that area,
okay.
Not too far from the entrance.
I know that's a hard question, but that's really interesting. Go ahead.
Well, Thomas Raglan died December 11th, 1912, as you can see on his marker, and he was the last surviving child of the interesting family that we've been talking about. And his marker is at Rose Hill. And there's an area where a lot of his family's buried kind of right in the same area. Some of them have markers and some of them don't.
Gotcha.
My great-grandmother's sister does not have a marker, but she's, according to her death certificate, she is buried in the family plot.
Well, let me ask you something about Rose Hill in general. Do they have a record, do they have a plot layout of where people are?
Yes.
They do, and I'm not exactly sure who maintains that thing. There was a Mr., what was his name, McAllister? Mm-hmm. And he had the records before he passed away, and he maintained the cemetery as far as having it cut. But I'm not sure. We do know that the records that Higgins had was destroyed in a fire.
Okay.
And there's many graves up there that I personally know a person is buried here, there, wherever.
Right.
But there's no markers and there's nothing other than the obituaries that buried at Rose Hill.
Gotcha.
That's pretty much it.
I would say that cemetery's getting close to full.
It is. It is. I think all the plots pretty much are sold and it's pretty much full.
Yeah. Okay.
So that's the conclusion of the children.
Okay.
So now I'm going to go back to Mial.
All right.
He was in the 1850 census records after the death of his wife. He was living in the household in Arkansas with his daughter. And I believe he came back to Lincoln County sometime after the death of his son-in-law, Doyle Griffiths, in 1852. And we found a document from 1859 with Mial's name stating he's the Deputy Register of Deeds under Peter Cunningham in Lincoln County, Tennessee.
So it'd be like Randy DeLapp's job?
Exactly.
Yes. Wow.
Exactly.
Wow.
Then in the 1860 census, he does appear in the household of his daughter, Nancy Griffiths, and her children in Lincoln County. In 1862, at the age of 77, Mial ran for the office of Register of Deeds of Lincoln County and won the election.
Wow.
At 77.
Wow.
So he was involved in politics too, evidently.
Never
No.
too old to run.
Never too old. But now understand, in 1862, you're in the Civil War now. So all the young men are off
Oh.
At
in
war.
battle. So that's why I think the older people that was too old, they got the jobs. Although he was involved before this.
Right.
But-
Very good.
And there's a list of all of the people that were elected to each office in that Lincoln County Heritage book, and that happens to be on page 7. I think that's the last.
His
The last
property
scan.
of deeds.
Yeah.
Wow.
Okay,
Shows
Mial.
Randy DeLapp, 2002.
Yes.
Maxine Thornton. These are people I know. Then you go
Yeah.
all the way back to
Yeah.
1810.
Yeah.
That is really very, very interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mial Ramsey died on October the 19th, 1865 at the age of 80. The Observer newspaper had not restarted their presses after the war, so there's no notice for his death. So the only way we knew the date of his death was from the marker that was in the cemetery. And he died just a few short months after the death of his son, Mial Jr., who died on the Sultana.
Wow.
And he's
Say that one more time. That last thing you said. He died. how
just
far?
a few months.
Just a few months.
Because Mial Jr. died in April,
Right.
and Mial Sr. died in October
Wow.
of the same year.
Wow.
And Mial Sr. then was buried beside his wife, Sally, in the Ramsey Cemetery on Old Malina Road.
Wow, that is really that's a really cool story.
Yeah.
And I knew it was going to be cool. Of course, this is the first time I've heard it. I was just taking y'all's word for it. It was going to be good, but that's a very fascinating.
Yeah. And I wanted to say then, now at the end, that it's been an amazing journey to find all of this historical information connected to Lincoln County
Right.
because of the finding of the lost cemetery.
That's true.
And the
And the connection back to your family.
Well, yes, that was interesting too. The property owner, Don Wiley, led local cemetery researchers, Wayne Owens and Jim Stillman, to the site. And Wayne and Jim photographed and documented the cemetery for Find a Grave, as he stated earlier. And then Sherry Tomerlin and Bobby Springfield and Peggy Coleman, we all worked together at the archives and contributed to the project. So
Absolutely.
It was just a lot of fun too, along with it. And our archives has so much valuable information that just, anybody can go there, and Sherry's always helpful, and so is everybody else. We all try to help when somebody comes in if we're there.
We work with her brother Lee here, so Lee Smith, and so we appreciate them doing what they do there and keeping up that, because in the future, 100 years from now, they may be talking about us. So you're talking about
right. And then earlier this year, Don Wiley submitted a photo of the cemetery marker along with the military record of Mial Ramsey to Linda Williams, who's in charge of the Lincoln County Warrior Project. And Mial Ramsey Sr. is now the 4th soldier from the War of 1812 that's been submitted to that project, which is a wonderful project too.
And Linda's the one who sort of got this whole thing together, and we appreciate her getting us together.
Yes.
And hopefully we can capture more history for hopefully the next generation to hear these older stories as well.
Yeah.
Wayne, got anything else?
The only thing that I want to end with, all my life I've heard about the Civil War being brother against brother. And it's interesting to actually find someone in Lincoln County where the two brothers were fighting on the opposite sides.
That's interesting. It's sort of like being around the Thanksgiving table,
That's
and you
what
have
I'm thinking.
people who have different opinions, even in your own family, and then you see they actually fought against one another in the old days. That had to be a tough situation for Mial himself, who lost a child and died just a few months after that. So, dying sad for sure. But anyway, such a great story. Thank you for what y'all do. Today we've had Pat Davis and we've had Wayne Owens here. We appreciate y'all so much. Anything you want to say before you close?
Well, we thank you for letting us be able to come and do this and get the story out.
Absolutely.
And anybody, that maybe is connected to the family, somebody might turn up that knows something about the family that we don't know about. And, if they come to the archives, we'd be glad to talk to them and find out more information.
Tell them where the archives is located.
The archives is on West Washington Street. It's actually behind the Lincoln County Health Building.
Gotcha. Very good. And it's next to the Senior Center too.
Yes.
So that's a good thing. Thank y'all for what you do. I hope that we do this again sometime with another story. But this has been in the works for a couple of years. You've had that, so next time we'll have to do it quicker. So because every time someone passes away, we lose a library of people of information.
Right.
Thank y'all very much.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
Thank
you very
you.
much. We appreciate you watching here on Fayetteville Public Utilities Channel 6, and we'll see you back in here next time.